expansion from the shop. It's all to do with form through to winning new business.
Understand.
Everybody seems to be having a good time. It's good.
Yeah, the results are that.
That's fantastic. Right, that's good. That means we're going to be able to do it.
More studies you can have more contracts. More studies at once, more contracts, more revenue.
Okay.
I don't think he said he was going to do 4 more business or shipping serial
So you will make more money.
Yes.
It always comes back to that, and that's the part that's kind of.
And you can have compromise ones too. You can have it.
Yeah. Have you had any questions?
Well, let's just go ahead. It's like, you know this part? Blah, blah, blah.
You can have
And then it comes to this.
Yes.
That's always where we're at. Like, you fix different people that are all like, it's just like, well, like they
Yeah. Does anybody want more coffee?
It's because you're taking it away?
Yes, or I'll make more if there is,
Well, if there's
if
something,
anybody wants more.
can be turned on.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you because I know this is really what I want you to do some solid work on this offline. But before we start, has anybody come up with any new buying drivers for their offering already? Bhavik already has. If you'd like to share what you've come up with, because the whole purpose of this is to come up with new buying drivers or more objective buying drivers. Could you like to share what you just discovered? And it's really nice, I like this one.
So typically on a construction project, if the project's underway and you want to make a change to something that's being built, you go to the site, you document what you want to change, fill out a form, and start that process on how you get this change. Because everything has to be controlled, everything has to be managed. So they take this form back to the office, they'll fill it out and get that change processed. So if you can shrink the time that it takes to process these changes, then you can save time on your schedule and you can save money when it comes to planning your project. So if you can save time and save money when you plan your project, you can bid lower on these projects, because you can reduce the amount of the project time, length, and cost.
And a contingency, which we always, every salesman hates contingency.
And if you can get a lower bid price, you have a better chance of winning more business.
So we've got a straight line there between a very technical function on the site, not a website, on a building site, right the way through to winning more business, because you have to, and certainly when we were bidding, we'd always put 10-15% contingency on something, because that's just the way life is. But if you've got a really good control system, suddenly you can really reduce that down. And that's a lovely example. Has anybody come up with anything else with the so what's that they hadn't quite realised was a buying driver before? Or you just come up with new words for stuff you'd come across before? Okay. It's all right. I would be surprised if you didn't have a pretty good job on things. Here's a quick recapitulation of what we're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about finding what the customer's pains are, what their buying drivers are, and then being able to say, that's great, that's exactly what we do. I'm going to go through a couple of things, and then we'll talk about how we convert it into money. Because at some point, you're going to have to justify your price, whether it's a price for a product or a price for a service. And that's where we're going to go. Along the way, this is what you've just been looking at, and this is what I should have shown you before this. Here's the characteristic. It has a ceramic coated shaft. Well, so what? Here's the so what. It means it can resist high temperatures and wear. So what? Requires less lubricant. So what? Resists wear, etc. And eventually we come down to here to very seldom requires repair, which is very close to being a takeaway, and then therefore you have fewer costly breakdowns. Everybody with me so far? Then we did a so what else? Well, so what else? Well, there's fewer costly late penalties because of things breaking down. And in this particular buying situation, it's a building site where when things break down, there are time penalties because that's the way things work. And immediately I have to remind you, it's so dependent upon the buyer. You can't pitch this. You've got to find out whether this is relevant to your buyer. And the last one is less expensive downtime. So what we've got here is a set of 3 takeaways. What we've also, I want to demonstrate to you, is you've really got a takeaway pair here. This is a very powerful statement. Pitching takeaways is the worst thing you can do. If you buy my software, if you buy my services, you're going to make more money and be less stressed. Not very convincing, is it? It sounds really hokey, you know? You buy my PC, you're going to be as happy as you want to be and a millionaire. Really hokey. What people need to hear is a flow. As a result of a ceramic coated shaft, it very seldom requires repair, and therefore you save money on breakdowns. And this is what we call a takeaway sequence. And this is very powerful. And if you can work through this process here, you can then have a set of very powerful statements, all of which end up with a buying driver. So you can come up with a statement which moves from a feature with a simple set of words, or maybe 2 or 3 sentences, to a takeaway. That make sense? It's called a takeaway sequence. Very powerful when you explain to people how things work. Okay, so how do you store all these? Because there's a heck of a lot. We said there was a heck of a lot. So I want to introduce you to a couple more characteristics, which I wasn't going to explain, but you're doing really well with the time. First of all, this is what we call a takeaway quadrant. And this is where we're going to store our takeaways. Do you remember the 3,500 versus the 5 or 6? That was a classic situation where you'd end up with 5 takeaways. And the purpose of this sheet, and we now have it online, so you can look at it on your device, is you can actually then have a conversation with your customers to see which one of the takeaways, which are going to appear in a moment, are of interest to them. But before I look at the detail, we can characterize the takeaways in different ways. There are towards takeaways and away from takeaways. I'll explain in a moment. And there are business takeaways and there are personal takeaways. 2 times 2 makes 4. All right? So, the towards. What would you guess a towards buying driver is?
Income and state.
Yep. You want to make that income, and it's not always a specific thing. It's towards making more money. It's towards being happier. Now, what will be an away from state? Well, not even risk, but I want to get away from having back pain every morning. So towards, and I'm missing out a whole bunch of cognitive and behavioural psychology, but it's deep within most people that certain characteristics and belief they have are towards and some are away from. Towards, people tend to be always wanting to achieve something, less worried about risk. The away from people are the people who see the risks and are driven to prevent those risks happening. And when you build your teams, you need to have a good mixture of towards and away from. Because if they're all towards, you're going to get hit by something you didn't expect. And if they're all away from, they're going to be so miserable, nothing's going to happen. So you need to fix them up. Now, it's important when you're talking, and I hope you'll do this tomorrow, when you're talking to your buyer, we're going to have 2, maybe 3 dumb buyers. I'm going to be one, Majid's going to be another, I hope to get a third. That you try and work out whether we are towards people or away from people. For what reason do you think that is a useful piece of information to have? Whether you're talking to a major pharmaceutical or to an individual who's going to buy a basket full of stuff. Why is that useful?
You need to know which one of the tires you have to push.
No, because remember I said there wasn't a one-to-one relationship between tires and towards and away from.
The way you phrase things.
Keep going, I think you're there. Yep.
Yeah, so like depending on the person's inclination, then you have to highlight one aspect or another of your
You got it.
product.
So that's great. That's exactly what we do. Our product will prevent that happening, and it'll carry on preventing that happening for as long as you carry on paying our license fee, and that thing will not happen with any chance. So use that not happening. Maybe it's a phrase they've used 3 or 4 times. It's a very convincing way. Whereas if the person is a towards sort of person, they are not going to be motivated by an away from statement. Does that make sense? And these are fundamental human communication and influence skills. There's like a whole day's chunk that I've missed out. But if you read chapters 2 and 3, that gives you most of the behavioural psychology. Really solid stuff, which you can pick out, has nothing to do with sales or buying or whatever, just really useful human skills. But this towards and away from, can you think of all of you, of one person you know who's a towards person, and one person who's away from. Just think about it for a moment. You all can, everybody. You just think of your friends, your relations. It's a very solid characteristic. It can vary, so it could be that I'm one characteristic when I'm at home and I'm another characteristic at work, but it's seldom, you know, if you really are coherent, most people are solid there all the time. Now we've got business and personal as the other array on the matrix. So what do you think these might be? Come on, give me something here, folks.
Motivating factors for the individual business versus their personal gain.
That's it. Is it the business gain or the personal gain? Really important. Really important. I tell you a story. There's a guy, he was a buyer for a bank, and he was buying some, it was effectively a report writer. It was a bit more complicated than that, but it was a report writing software that the guy was buying. And I wasn't quite as good at this as I am now, and we'd worked out the financials behind the benefits to the business. So the business was going to get a lot of benefits from buying this software. And he was very, very keen to buy it. And we sat having a beer one evening. I said, thank you so much for your support. You've become a real coach here. I said, you seem to have gone way beyond, you know, what the cause that's needed to help me sell this stuff in. He said, we didn't quite use his word. He said, I have a personal takeaway. He didn't say that, but he explained to me that on a Friday, he wanted to get home. And he never got home on a Friday because they were doing the end of week analysis. It was a retail company, it was a big retail store. And the end of the week, he had to stay behind for the big report run to be done, and he just wanted to get home earlier. Now, I could never put that into a proposal. So, you know, your head of reporting will get home to his kids and be able to go to the concert in the evening on a Friday. But it's really useful to know, because it's part of the whole process. You suddenly understand why the person's there. There are more fundamental personal ones that the person may want to be less stressed, have less ill health, spend less time on the road. There may be some business benefits that come directly from that. And you need to look at the takeaways and know whether which of those are in. Could they be in multiple places? What do you think? Yeah, no reason not. So you have so that's why you'll see some of these have quite prolific numbers of takeaways. Because you could easily have a business towards takeaway of making more money, and a personal towards of making more money. And you can have a business one, you can imagine very quickly. It's quite hard to get them in all four. But this is where we store them. So let me show you some of the things we put on here. Most important is this is a sheet that the companies that have implemented this, you keep this as a live sheet because things change. You may go out on a call and meet a customer that's got a new need. You've done all this analysis and you've missed one of these things. My God, I just realised there's a new takeaway over here. So you've got to be able to update it. Also, very important thing here is you've got the analyst and the date, that's obvious, but we need to know who the buyer is and what the offering is. And depending upon the number of different buyer and different offering combinations, you will have one sheet for each. So I may be taking a set of PC repair services. I'll take them to IBM. I'll take exactly the same offering. I'll take them to the student community of the University of Ottawa, and I'll have very different takeaways. I may be pricing them slightly differently, then they become different offerings. But it's always important that each quadrant is for a specific offering to a specific buyer. Make sense? What I also teach is when it's an important sales call, you need to go back to this sheet for that specific company. So I've got this down here, target company, or it might even be an individual. So you go back and say, okay, does this one apply really strongly at the moment to this company? Is this company in the middle of a mergers and acquisition fight? So is cash flow really important to them? Oh, well, maybe I better talk to them. Maybe there's a good way of starting a conversation. I read in the Financial Times that you're in the middle of a big fight at the moment. How's that affecting you? Yeah, well, my biggest problem is cash flow. Oh, that's great. That's exactly what we do. You see it's a bit hokey, but you see what I'm saying. So always you've got a buyer, you've got an offering, but you can come back to this. And I've even done it in a car park. Just before I've gone in, I run quickly through the takeaways, and nowadays it's so easy to look at things online. You go and look at what's happening in the local paper, what's happening in the news, etc. It's amazing how often it will affect what you've got. So let's see what we got here. Something's supposed to be happening. Oh, we've done that. Right, so what we've got here is we've got some business towards. So as a result of whatever it is, what's happening here? I'm selling some business consultancy, and these are sorry. The buyer is startups who are doing business consultancy, okay, and they are buying an ABC analysis, which is what we're doing here, okay. That's my offering, and my buyers are startups, but they're not tech startups. Startups doing business consultancy. So in this particular case, the business towards would be they can get bigger sales and earlier through chunking, which is what you're going to learn about tomorrow. Okay, so their business towards, they want bigger sales, they want them earlier. There's the I, there's the T. Okay, repeat recurring revenue versus one-shot sales. So rather than just making a single sale, they can actually turn it into a sale which keeps going. So your income and risk of income stopping. Could be phrased in different ways. Faster channel qualifying. Remember I talked about qualifying. If I'm trying to talk this man into being a distributor for me, my chances of wasting time doing that are reduced because I can find out very quickly what his distribution business really wants to take away from me. So I've got T and TI. So we've got to set a business towards. I don't think we've got time to look at them all in detail, but we can set up here. Less stress on managers, definitely personal. Better earnings, bonus, commission value. Not the same as income to the company. Personal earnings, bonus, commission. More time for whatever else is important.